So, Captain Pug, we were on chapter 3. Meanwhile, at the boating lake, Lady Miranda's screams were so loud that her footman immediately swam back to shore. "What is it, my lady?" asked Footman Will. "Pug's gone," Lady Miranda exclaimed. "He's been pug-napped. He's been pug-rustled. He's been stolen and put in a picnic." "In a picnic?" Footman Liam repeated, checking his ear for water. "There's no time for explanations," said Lady Miranda, dashing toward the sedan chair. "Follow that bus!" Meanwhile, Pug and the picnic lady were getting along very well. "I have to admit," the lady said as she fed Pug pieces of cake, "I wasn't expecting to meet a captain today." This got Pug thinking because although the food was helping tremendously, he was very worried. Where was he going? Would he ever see Lady Miranda again? Who was going to lick her face when she was sad? Who was going to help her eat the last piece of cake at tea time? Pug helped himself to another sandwich. Just then he had an idea. Lady Miranda had wanted him to be a captain, so if he became a famous captain, she'd hear about him and be able to find him again. It was a brilliant plan. How long did it take to become a famous captain? And what did a captain actually do? Pug wasn't sure, but he knew that captains were commanding and brave, and he would try his best to learn to be those things. First, though, he'd have to get over his fear of water. A few minutes later, the bus pulled up at the next stop on its tour. The picnic lady helped Pug out. They'd stopped next to a beautiful river. While everyone else wandered away, Pug thought he'd better start getting used to the water. He went down to the riverbank. There he found some rowers getting ready for a race. There were 4 big, tall men in each boat, with a much smaller man sitting in the back. In the boat nearest to Pug, the small man had stood up on his seat and was shouting at his team. "Perhaps he's a captain?" thought Pug. The man seemed to be in charge. He also sounded very angry. Pug was listening carefully in case he picked up any tips when he heard one of them say, "That Pug could do a better job than you, Brian." "Me?" thought Pug. He felt rather proud until suddenly 2 large hands clasped around him in the middle, and the next moment he was sitting in Brian's place in the boat. Uh-oh. As Brian stormed off in a huff, someone else went to look up what the rules were about a pug entering a rowing race. They didn't have much time. The race was about to begin. Pug couldn't believe he was actually on a boat that was actually on water, just like a real captain, he thought. He was so pleased he almost forgot to be scared. "At least you're lighter than Brian," one of the rowers said. Pug was glad the rower had noticed how trim he was and wished Lady Miranda had heard, particularly as she always wanted him to go on a diet. Once the boats were lined up, Pug could see that his team had their work cut out for them. The rowers in the other boats looked even bigger and much stronger. A horn sounded and Pug's boat started powering through the water. Pug liked that a lot less. In fact, he did not like it at all. There was no food on board to calm his nerves, so he resorted to the other thing he did when he wasn't happy. He barked a lot, nonstop. "Woof, woof, 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 woof." The oarsman began to row in time with his barking. Woof, 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 woof. The faster he barked, the faster they rowed, and the faster the boat went. Woof, 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 woof. The faster they went, the more scared Pug got, and the more quickly he barked. Soon they were going at a mighty speed. Pug feared his ears might flap off, they were going so fast. Woof, 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 woof. Before they knew it, Pug and his team were no longer last. They passed one boat and another. Now they were in second place in the race, and the finish line was approaching. Was it possible? Could Pug's team win their first race together? Just a few more strokes and they'd be in front. That was when Pug spotted an ice cream truck by the side of the river. "I was promised ice cream at the start of the day," he remembered. He was so busy remembering that he forgot to bark, and in the confusion that followed, his crew stopped rowing. The boat drifted over the finish line in second place. "You're certainly a bossy little skipper, aren't you?" commented the exhausted rower who'd been so kind about Pug's weight. Being bossy, thought Pug, is a bit like being commanding, and he called me a skipper, so I must be getting closer to becoming a real captain. Pug left the boat and went to check if the ice cream man had any mint chocolate chip. Look at, they're actually excited about getting second place. Chapter 4. Lady Miranda was becoming increasingly desperate to find Pug. Despite a valiant effort by Footman Will and Footman Liam, they'd been held up at some traffic lights, and the tourist bus with Pug on board had disappeared from sight. Lady Miranda did have a brilliant idea, however, and she called the bus company to find out where it was stopping next. The river was too far away for Footman Will and Footman Liam to carry Lady Miranda and the sedan car. They would have to take the train. Lady Miranda had never been on a train before. What were they going to do with the sedan car? Pug had finished his double scoop mint chocolate chip ice cream cone and had wandered along the riverbank until it joined up with a canal. There, in between two big wooden gates, was a tour boat with lots of people on board. Pug recognized some of them as the tourists from the bus. "Captain Pug, over here!" "Oh, Captain Pug, over here!" called out Picnic Lady. Pug was relieved to see a friendly face. "Come and sit by me, Captain," she said. Pug wagged his tail, but he wasn't sure he wanted to get on board. The water below him looked very dark and deep. There was a plank to help him climb aboard, but the plank seemed narrow and wobbly. He sat by the side of the canal and had a little think. Picnic Lady waited patiently for Pug. As she did so, she helped herself to the afternoon tea she had thoughtfully packed. The smell of freshly baked scones drifted down to Pug's nose. Pug drooled as he approached the plank. It was still very narrow, and when Pug took his first step, it wobbled horribly. Pug took a few more steps until he was in the middle of the plank. He was as close to Picnic Lady as he was to the safety of dry land. He looked down and shivered at the dark water below. Then he looked at the delicious feast. "There's plenty for you," Picnic Lady called out encouragingly. That was all Pug needed to hear. Very bravely, he put one paw in front of the other and wobbled his way on board. Just then, the boat began to sink. "Help!" thought Pug as dry land started to disappear from view. Perhaps that second scoop of ice cream was a mistake, he wondered anxiously. Lady Miranda must have been right about that diet. He was too heavy for the boat. "Woof, woof, woof," barked Pug, but nobody else seemed worried. "Woof?" Huh. What is going on? So we'll have to wait and see about